Okay, we're going to do a quick tutorial on making hair, or at least fur and hair texture. Um, I've I've posted some links to some other artists working in ZBrush to make this happen. So I went into the this area right here in the light box, and I just chose this head. Um, and you can see that this head is on multiple layers. There's the main head area, there's the eyes and the teeth that are kind of hidden. And then what I did with this is I divided it a couple of times so that I had a little bit of resolution to work with. Um, uh, some of you are looking to do fur, so if I appended a tube, not a tube, but a ring. And if I were to bring it in right now, that's what it would look like. And it's also very low poly. So what I did with this one is I divided it several times by doing Control D, and then I moved it around. And then I also inflated it. So I did that kind of a thing, and I went to my deformation. I went to inflate, and you can see how you can inflate or constrict that thing. I'm just making kind of a collar for right now, just so I can show you a quick technique. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to go with this one right here. So let's imagine that this is a fur collar to a cape or something like that. I'm going to show you a quick way to give it a texture that's like fur or like hair. I'm just using the move brush to give it a little bit of space and style. So some of the brushes that you're going to end up using, you will probably more than likely download. There's so many free brushes, and there are so many great brushes to use. But if you weren't going to do that, what I will sometimes do to cheat is, first I just want to remind everybody that I'm going to put Dynamesh on, make sure the blur is off, and I'm going to divide it once. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the light box, and I'm going to go to Brush, and I've shown some of you this already, but I use this one that's called Stitch. It's up here. It's part of the main brushes that come with, and there's this Stitch button. There's Stitch brush right here that's got kind of some lines on it. I will sometimes use this to create some fur or some hair texture. I have my symmetry on, but before you start sculpting on it, figure out the size brush you want, like how fine you want the hair. And I'm gonna, if you make it really small, you can get some really small tendrils like this, or you can make it larger and kind of create these bigger shapes. Now I will sometimes go in and I'll smooth it out a little bit and then go back in with some more detail. Again, this is super easy and quick, where you don't have to really think about it too much, and it's a very passable hair, you know, or fur. You can do all kinds of things with it. When you come to the center, as you've seen in one of the videos, if you haven't watched it, turn the X off so that you don't get any weird things going on like that. You'll start getting these folding intersections because the symmetry's on. So by turning it off, I can go in there and get a flow. The other thing that I do is I don't do straight lines. I don't do this because that's not how hair and fur, you know, lay. So what I usually do is I kind of do a little bit of a snake, a little bit of a hook. Okay, and I think it's still kind of low poly, so I'm going to divide it one more time, and you can start to see it's looking a little bit better. Now, again, this depends on where this sculpture is going to be used. Is it going to be used in a game? Is it going to be used to be 3D printed? Is it going to be a still? Depends on how detailed you want it. Sometimes you just want some minor texture on it, and then when you start to do the texture mapping and the painting, you can add some more depth. But when you start using some of the techniques that were in some of the videos where the they have individual hairs and all that sort of stuff, it becomes a very, very complicated and dense sculpture. So that's one way to do it. Now, I'll show you another way. I'm going to undo all this. And now this is a downloaded brush that I downloaded. I'm going to go back to Lightbox by pressing the comma key, hit brush, and then you can see all these brushes that are in here. I downloaded this some time ago, and I like the way it looks because it has kind of a whimsical feel to it. So I double-clicked on there, and you can see all the options you have. You can do groups of them or pieces of them, or you can do individual hairs. So I'm going to pick that one there. And with some of these brushes, when you use them, they will kind of appear like that. It's just asking, are you sure you want to undo all that business that I just did? And I say, okay. Okay, I need to divide this again a few times. Some of the brushes will just look ugly unless you have some room for this topography to be applied to the outside of this. Okay, so you can see that there's kind of a nice fur texture there, or hair texture. It's more whimsical. It's very simple. It follows the contour of this shape. And you can see that there are other versions of it in here that you can choose from. Like, I think I like using this one, if that's the one that will allow me to use. Some of them are not accessible, and I'm not sure why. I think it might be that one. Okay, so you can modify the depth of how thick you want these strands by changing the Z intensity. Okay, so I can go around here. I can do little ones. If you have a brush like this, I'm undoing a bunch of stuff, you might think about doing it like the shingles of a house. So I'll start down here and put some fur down on the lower scale, the lower level, and then I'll go just above it and just above it. Now this becomes a kind of a repeating pattern, which is very simple, but it might not work for you because it's repeating pattern. It doesn't look very natural. So you could also continue to pick different types of brushes to then mix that up. So I might do a couple of those, and then I'm going to go in and choose, let's say, maybe this one up here, if it'll allow me. Let's see, that one there. So this is one way. Now, if you look at this dimensionally, it's not very deep, but I can, like I said, hold down the space bar, and I can increase the density of it and do it like that. And then you have a nice depth to it. So it'll have a nice shadow when you go to, when you start to do a rendered version of this. There you can see the nice drop shadows and all that. Okay, so again, this is another way to do it. And I'm going to just do a little bit more. Let me see. Some of these work and some of these don't, and someday I'll figure it all out. Okay. So there are some larger ones, or larger swatches of it. Now you'll see I'm dragging it, and I could do it upside down just by moving my cursor around. But you probably want to follow the flow of the fur line. So you can start to see from a distance, like that's up close, but from a distance that looks pretty nice. It looks like a kind of a very sort of whimsical, cartoonish fur way to do things like that. So if I go back to some of these other brushes, you can see there are all different kinds of textures. But now we're going to try to do the one that was for the tutorial that involved doing the entire head of the character. So we're going to start with this basic head shape. I'm going to append a sphere. I'm going to go to the sphere level or layer, and I'm going to change the shape of it. I'm going to first shrink it down and bring it up and move it here, and I'm going to shrink it down a little bit more And then I'm going to start to move it around so it becomes more like the hairstyle I want it to be, or at least to cover the area of the head that you want the hair to be. And that was pretty fast, actually. Okay, I'm going to want to come down like that. I'm going to want to bring that in a little bit so the ears aren't covered. Okay, so let's just say that that's where we're going to get started. I am going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to get rid of some of it that's by the ears so she doesn't have hair coming over her ears. Okay, and then I'm going to use my dam standard, which is kind of a sharp tool that'll cut right in. So you can see very quickly you can kind of get the shape that you want. Sculpting technique tutorial. Now this is much like the link that I sent you. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit. So we've got our base head. We've got a shape that we created from an appended sphere. This is what the hair will follow as a contour. And I'm going to go to my brush menu. I'm going to pick curve snap. It looks a little bit like it's right here. You see curve tube, but there's curve snap right next to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw right on the model. You can see it's just a very flat-ended tool or tube, but it does follow the contour of the shape, which is nice. Now you'll see this red line appear. This red line means that you can still edit this curve. Okay, you can move the front, you can move the back, you can move the middle. It can actually even move off, which you don't really want when we're doing hair. So there's some modifiers to make this tube a little bit more hair-like, and it'll also make it a little bit easier to control. So we're going to undo that. I'm going to now go to the stroke menu, and then you'll see all the way at the bottom of the stroke menu is curve modifiers. Now it says curve modifiers there. Right below that is size. I'm going to turn size on. Then it says curve fall off. I'm going to turn that on, and it creates this, it opens up this little chart or graph. And now what I can do is I can actually move this. I'm going to reset that. I'm going to move this point here up a little higher, and I'm going to move the end of the curve all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so now it's got a very linear, starting thick here, ending very thin here. But if I grab the center, I can kind of create this nice curve so that I can have something that's a little bit more natural. So it's going to start a little thick, thicken in the center, and taper off. Okay, so once I'm done with that, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the curve brush, or open up this curve menu here, and then I'm going to hit lock start. So that means it'll lock it in the beginning of wherever you start to draw. So if we want to do a piece of hair that starts at the hairline, I can start like that, and I can just draw it any shape I want. And now you can see that it's got a little bit more of an organic hair feel to it, right? Now, I'm going to do that a little bit larger. I'm going to just increase the size of my brush, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm just going to follow the contour. Now you can really see what's going on. You've got it hugging this shape that you've created in a very natural way. And the nice thing is you can still modify this. If I want this to have a little bit more of a swoop to it, I can keep moving it, but you'll notice that it won't leave the start position. Now you still can move the start position manually, but once you pull from anywhere else, it'll stay in place. So I'm going to go back to a pleasing curve. And then that's the beginning of it. Now, depending on the type of hair you want or whatever it is, what you can do is figure out the shape you want. Now, what I just did was you can see that if I hover over this, that red and black line is still there. Now, I can't draw anywhere else on here to do another strand unless I click off of it, because right now it's still editable. So if I'm really happy with it and I really like it, I'm going to click anywhere else on the model, and you'll see that it disappears. So now you can't really move it around the same way you were doing it. But what you can do is you can start another strand of hair and it won't interfere with that one. Okay, so I just did that. I didn't care for it. I got rid of that. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to say, I kind of like that. I like the way that looks. Now, depending on where you are with the model, you can see that this actually sinks inside the head or inside the mesh. So you want to make sure it stays on the surface even when you're editing it. And look at it from different angles because you really want this to look good from all different angles. All right, so I'm just going to start adding some more hair and doing some more of that. I like that. I don't need to edit it anymore. I click off of that. It disappears. I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, and now I can really start to move this stuff around and not have the other ones change. It'll be just a way to do it so that you're happy with it. This is all completely up to you. Now, this technique, again, can be very complicated, but it's not terrible. But it's better than trying to create all these individual tubes by sculpting them just from appended objects that you bring in. The nice thing about it is you could do all this very subtle work, and the other thing is because it's on another layer, it doesn't affect your sculpture here. What I always do is I'm going to add something, I always put it on another layer so that I can then modify it and move it. And wherever it starts to, wherever it exits from this part of the sculpture, it could be a nice clean line. It doesn't become blended in. It's hard to get a nice blended or a nice crisp line between the hair and the head or a costume and the body. That's why I always have them on different layers. Same thing with the eyes and teeth and all that. So that's how you use these brushes. In that tutorial, if this helps you understand it, you can go back to that tutorial and take it further so that you can add your details. Now, in that tutorial, you can see right now that everything is very, very thin. Not thin, but the resolution is very, very low. So what I can do is you can see that all these are different polygroups. I can go down to split, and then I can split the groups, and it'll put all this hair on a different size. Or not a different size, but a different layer. So if I do group split, I'm going to hit OK. And now you'll see that I have different pieces of hair that I can still modify and still move around. All right. So and then I can also, if I wanted to, I could divide that a couple of times. And then I can go in and use tools like the damn standard brush, and I can add detail to it. I might want to divide it a couple of times. So you can then start to make it look even more like hair and less like these geometric shapes. And again, this all matters if you're going to 3D print this, if you're just going to do a still object for your portfolio, or if you're going to be doing it in a game. It depends how detailed and how dense you want this image or this character, because it has to be relatively simple to work in a game, but it can be more complex if it's just going to be a rendered image to show off your design skills. So this could go on further and further. We can do more and more of this, but you get the basic idea. And there's so many great tutorials that are free online, plus free brushes. So I hope this helps. Have a try, play with it, and then we can talk about it more in class. Thank you so much.